Let's go ahead and do the front end side of things. So this time with the front end, I'm not going to use my data provider. I'm not going to create like a show page. We're not going to navigate. We're not going to use React. Well, we are going to use React Router just to set up a route to go to like this things page. But then we're going to do all of the actions on this one page. So let's kind of see what I mean by that. So let's first start by creating in our client, in our pages, this things.js file. Import React from React and things. Do this first part of just getting this component set up in our application. So I have a things component, and then I want to go to my app.js. So let's go to my app.js, add a link for it. So right here, things. I'll just say this will be the path / things. It's hard code a link.
Hey James, does the order right there matter? If it's home, facts, things, facts about, does it matter which comes before which?
Yeah, this is my nav bar, so the order matters in the sense that this is the order they're going to show up in my UI.
Okay.
If I go to like my index so here I'm doing my index.js. This is just where I'm defining my routes. This really doesn't matter. I'm just saying, hey, if you see in the URL / things, go to that things component. So that's what I'm adding to here. I need to make sure I import that component. So I did those 2 lines. So if I'm looking at what files has changed in my app.js, just that one link. In my index.js, it's just importing this things thing and then adding the path, the route, and then in my things.js, just creating this component. So now if I go to localhost 3000, I should have that things link. I go there and that takes me to my things, that component. Cool. So that's set up. So maybe just to be like maybe a little anal with committing, do a little commit message. All right. All right, so now I can go to my things component. Now, normally we've been doing this in our provider, but there's no reason I can't just do this here. Let's grab our use effect here and our use state and just keep track of our thing state here. So I'm gonna have a const things and set things. We'll use state. And then I can do my use effect. Remember, my use effect is a function. So there's me calling the function. The first argument I give it is a function. There's just a anonymous function that's going to be called. And then for now, it's called a dependency list. I'm going to pass it a dependency list, which is just going to be an empty array. That's how you're always going to kind of stub that out. Okay, so then inside of here, we can, do stuff with component mounts. So that's kind of like the use effect. It allows us to do things when the component mounts. We'll see some other things we can do with it, but for now, that's going to be it. What I'm going to want to do is I want to call this method called getThings. What do you think getThings is going to do?
It's going to get things.
Yeah, this is going to get our things from our database. So this there is some repetition here, with the React. A lot of the times when my component mounts, I want to do a database call. That happens. That's a lot of times. Let's mount this component. Oh, let's go grab some data. So this becomes a little repetitive, and then we want some state and a way to set that state. So we can do our try catch. Error handling. What is this call going to be?
Axios.get.
Yeah.
Oh wait, Axios.get.
Yeah. So it's Axios dot and import Axios because I need to use it in this file. So it's get slash, what's my path?
API/things.
Yeah, API/things. And then I'm going to want to set things res and data. And let's just do as, so we don't have to log it. I mean, it's almost just as easy to do the JSON.stringify as it is the log. You see how this right here is pretty repetitive? We could use a hook. And we'll do this eventually. Because this is really repetitive. Like use Axios. Pass it the URL. That would do all of this for us. Hey, I want, the data and a way to set the data. And I want to get it from this URL. We'll eventually, because this is, I'm just showing like, there is a lot of repetition here. We'll break this down into like one line of code eventually. But for now, let's just manually do it. So we have some state. When our component mounts, let's go grab the things. Here's our call. We do an axios.get to our URL, then we set the things. And now we can see that in our state. And there it is. Cool. Now, this is all going to be on one page, but it doesn't mean I can't go and create another component to help organize this page. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a thing.js. Whose responsibility is going to be to render one thing. So const, let's just do this, import React from React. Const thing equals. What does a thing have? What's like the one attribute? Well, it has two attributes really that we kind of want. What are the two attributes that you think I want to grab?
Name.
Name's probably going to be important. What's
other-
another one?
The other thing.
The ID. Everything's going to have an ID. I think this can be nice. Where do you think I'm going to get these from? Like this is a React component. I want each thing to have a name and ID.
Props.
Yeah, props. So props, I kind of just expect there to be a name and ID on props. Default. All right. So now now I have this component, which is just, responsibility, it's an organization thing, an organizational tool that I separate this logic into another component. It's going to keep my things component a lot cleaner. So now I can do something like this. I can go ahead and do like a, things. Well, let's do this as a method. Let's just call this render things. Render. Turn. So I want to go through all my things. I want to map. Go through each of those items. I'm going to use that thing component I just created. Give it a key. Give it an ID prop. This here we'll just actually just code it out so we can visualize it. Give it a name prop. What am I missing in this map function?
Returning the thing key.
I need to return this thing component. So now I render things. Boom. There they all are. Maybe I want to add my class name, a border, I think it was. I have it here. I could do it in this might just, create some space. Cool. So there's all of my things. Questions on any of that? You kind of see how this right here is pretty repetitive. Like, you want to grab some stuff from a database. You do that on mount. You do your Axios call. You go over, you loop over, you do a map. Maybe you create an individual component for each specific, model you might have just to keep it organized. Like this is repetitive, right? It would look very similar if we look at like our facts. I mean, we did it. It's kind of weird. We did it in a different way with, we did that in our provider. I think that's where it gets a little more like it's not the stuff isn't happening in the same file but it's a lot of the stuff is the same.
Would it be pretty normal, like to be expected that we can see that it's repetitive and like we see what's going on, but we can't actually sit down and code it out without looking? Is that like normal right now?
Yeah, to try to make stuff like to maybe put some of this stuff into reusable logic. Maybe you can see that it's reusable and you maybe to yourself are saying, I bet you I could like throw this into a function or I could somehow reuse this. Like you can kind of see it, but doing it's a lot harder than kind of saying, I think I could do it. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it is. I'm sure like a lot of this, like as I'm explaining it to you or as you're watching it on a video, it makes sense. But then when you go try to do it on your own, you just get stuck. I think that's very, very normal. So yeah, like if I were to ask you now, what would be a next thing I could do? Like when I load this page, it goes and grabs all of the things. What might be a next step?
Maybe you want to add something.
Yeah, cool. Add something that looks great. So for add, once again, don't need to do like, this technically doesn't need to be on a new component, but it's probably going to make my life easier. So I'm going to do a thing form. Import React from React. Really don't even have to do this, but counts thing. Turn. Let's just do our little simple form right here. Form. Paragraph, this would be name. I think this is kind of repetitive, so we can maybe just do this right now. Input value equals name. Let's just grab use state while we're here. Use state. So I'm going to want to have some const, some name state, and I want a way to set that state. So I can use those in my input. Button. Not even like, maybe I don't even care, like don't even try to make this work for both. Let's just have it do for add. Export default. Thing. Oh, I forgot to actually set this equal to use state. So if this is just new for now, I can just like have that be an empty string. And this set name dot target value. And now let's just do on submit. And we'll submit. Like this right here, this is pretty repetitive. Setting up a form. And then like console.log. Just getting ready to like that object that I'm going to want to send. So yeah, for a form, I'm going to have some state for each input. I'm going to have a submit function that, you know, we prevent the default and where I want to like start creating that object to either create or update. And then I'll have a form, you know, with just some UI. Just one little line there. Okay. You know, I have a form as, you know, input like that. This is pretty repetitive. So now in my things, I can go ahead and maybe just put this thing form right here. So thing form. Maybe do another HR right there. So make sure you import your thing form. But now I'm able to create a new, now what I mean that this is all on the same page with our facts. When we went to a new facts, that's like we set that up in React Router and that took us to a whole new page. With this things component, it's all just on like I have this form on here. And then I click add. I'm logging an object with the key name and then the value in my form. Perfect. So that is now working. What could I do next? If like, and let's just stick on create. I'll just make, let's not worry about update. Let's say we want to stay on create. What do I want to do at this point? I could just, if you don't know how to do it, you don't worry about the how. Worry about like, what do I need to do, or what should I do next? What would make sense to do right now? I have my form all set up. I'm logging the input. What do I actually need to do? Bueller?
Axios.
Yeah, add to database. Now, with the facts, all of that state was living in my data provider. With this example, it's all living in this things component. So let's just do this here. Let's do a const add things function. So this takes a thing, and here we want to like add to DB. Okay, so now I have this add things message where I want to like console.log the thing. I'm doing this a little different. We're not using our data provider. So how do I give this add thing to my form? I can't use the context hook anymore. I need to pass this method to my thing form. Ideas? How do we pass down an ID or a name?
Like use context.
No, we can't use context because my state's not so. The thing with my facts that's very important is I'm doing this in my provider, my data provider.
Oh, because you're already doing that.
Yeah, so it's like data provider wrap, like my facts is in this value thing here. Go to my index.js, see my data providers like wrapping my whole app. Like there's some special stuff we're doing. In my things component, I just have the state here. So I'm maintaining the state. I'm just kind of showing you an example. I don't have to do this in my data provider. I could just maintain all of my thing state in here. So this is where the state's living. So this is where I'm going to want to like add it. Well, why don't I just pass that to the form as a prop? Just like I did with ID, just like I did with name in my thing. Let's pass it to my form. So now props. Now I should be able to have this props.add thing method. And I'll pass it the stuff from my data, from my I'll pass it this method from, that I'm getting from props. So I'm going to get rid of that console.log here. Let's go ahead and type yo, click add. Notice now that log is coming from my things.js. I'm logging right there, line 23. Sweet. So I'm actually passing the stuff. So now I can add it to my database. I don't have to technically do this here, but it's going to be nice because I can just update my state here. So this is going to be an async call, right? How do I add this to my database? Now, this is the exact same thing as the fact. I mean, we kind of had to like set up different, like we're hooking it up differently, but now that I'm at this spot, this is the exact same. I do an Axios call. What is the proper way to write this for create a thing? Is an Axios dot what?
Post.
What's my URL?
API/things.
API/things. Cool. And then I need to send it the thing. And then I can, let's just update the UI right here. Set things, res.data, spread out over things. This doesn't work. So here's our step of, add to database. This is add to state. Do I need to navigate here?
No, because this is all on the same page.
Yeah. Doesn't make sense to navigate here because I didn't go to a different page. So I don't know. Burgers. Add. There we go. It's updating to my state. It's saved to my database. If I refresh, it's not in order. It should be at the bottom, but there it is. I'm just going to copy this add thing. Let's do a delete thing. What should this maybe be? Do I need the whole thing to delete it?
Just the ID.
Yeah, I really just need the ID. What's the method going to be?
Delete.
Yeah, delete. I need to interpolate this now because I actually need to use that ID that was given to me. And then we delete that. How do I remove something from my things state?
Need to filter.
I filter. Let's go through each thing. Does the thing ID, as long as it does not equal the response.data.id, or I could just go ahead and use the ID that was given to me. Either one would work. So as long as it does not equal the ID of the thing that was deleted, keep it in this new array. And then we're going to set that to our new things. I'm going to call this delete thing yo. Let's call this delete thing method. Where do I want to pass this to your thing? This is the other line. I think this is the confusing part of this. Now we're not using context. Now I have to pass this down to the component. What component do you think I want to pass this to? Another way to ask is where do I want to put a button to say delete? That could be the other thing you could kind of ask yourself. You could be I know the code to do the Axios call and to remove it. I think that we can look at that and be that looks right. but now I actually need to call it and I need to hook it up to a click event.
Should be in your thing, right?
Yeah, so I'm eventually this is where I'm gonna want to put the button or something to click. Delete thing. So now all of these have a button to click on. But I want to pass it this method. So just like we did with the form, I need to pass it down as a prop. So I'm going to call this delete thing. Set this equal to, I'm kind of changing the method so they're not the same. So the name of the prop is delete thing. The value is delete thing meth. So if I want to actually call this method in my thing, on click, what is it called? How do I get it? Or how do I grab it from props? What is the name of it? Is it delete thing or delete thing meth? What is the name of the prop? Is my question.
Delete thing.
Yeah, it's delete thing. This is the value. So I can pull that off of there. So we can go ahead. What would be bad if what would happen if I did this? This is going to call it on all of them. This would actually delete them all from my database too. Let's go ahead and wrap this in an anonymous function so it only gets clicked when I actually click on the button. Let's go up to the top. And those are removing from my database. Since I'm removing them from my UI after that Axios call, I can kind of know that they're actually deleting. I could also go check my server, see all these things like where they're getting destroyed. Those all look like they're good. So, delete all of these things, just deleting them from my database. So if I hit refresh, I only have, about 10 things. Cool. So now delete's done. Might be a good time to do a commit. So we're done create, read, and delete. All right. Let's do update thing. Let's just think about the method. What does update need?
D.
It needs an ID, but it needs the whole thing, right? It needs a
Yeah.
thing. And it needs a thing with an ID because I'm going to do, what's my method going to be?
Put.
It's going to be a put, and I'll just grab that ID from the thing. What is this going to be? A filter or a map? I want to update one of the things.
Map.
Yeah, so that's going to be a map. So I'm going to go through each thing. Like this becomes like the same function. Does let's check to see if the thing I'm looking at, does that ID, does it equal my res.data.id? If it does, that was the thing that was updated. So let's return that in our new array. If not, just it wasn't changed, let's leave it the same. And that's just the initial thing that we were looking at. But for now, I'm going to comment this all out. And we're just going to console.log thing. I'm probably getting ahead of myself. That's a lot of code to write without testing it. Because this one's a little challenging, or not challenging. Well, yeah. So what do you think we want to have happen in the UI? Or I'll tell you, I want to have like a button on each of these things that says edit. And then like a form pops up. So let's do maybe let's maybe not even have it worried about it toggle now. Let's just give each of our thing components a form. So I'm going to go to my thing component. Just do this thing form. Cool. So now they all have their own individual form. But they should be pre-populated, right, with the values. Well, why don't I just go ahead and pass down the ID and pass down the name. Because in this case, they do have an ID and they do have a name that I'm getting from props. So, okay, what should the name be? Well, the name should be either props.id or an empty string. I do have props. I'm always going to have props defined as right here. If there's an ID on the prop, use that. Oh, wait, I want this to be name, actually, because if there's not, then use no name prop. Look at what that does. So on my new form, there's the default value would be no name prop. For all the other ones that are given a name prop, let's go ahead and use that. But yeah, I probably don't want to say no name prop. I'll just have it be an empty string. Now for my handle submit, I want to check to see if I have a props ID. Like this is kind of going to tell me what I need to do. Right? If an ID is given to me, we're going to want to update. If we don't have an ID, we want to add. So I could also use that kind of logic here. It'd be like props.id question mark. So if we do have an add, or sorry, if we do have an add, I'm going to have this say edit. Sorry, if we have an ID, this will say edit. If we don't, it will say, I can maybe say like update new. So now on my new form, it says new, and for all of these update forms, it says update because these all have IDs. Cool. So what I need to do now is also, if I go back to my things, there's this update thing method. Well, I actually need to pass this to each thing. So I'm going to pass that down as a prop. So each thing gets past the delete thing method and it gets past the update thing method. So this prop is called update thing. So I go into my thing model. Now I can pull that off of props. And now I'm going to pass that down to my form. And then in my thing form, now I finally have props dot that update thing method. and I can pass it the name and the ID. So now if I inspect and I click update on one of these, it's logging in my things.js, the name, I can change it. It's the change name and it also has the ID. All right. So then in my things, or this things method, I've now logged it, I've now hooked it up. So now I can like uncomment all this stuff out. What I'm missing something on this line. What do I need to do? What needs to go along with my put request? I have the put request, I have the path, but that's not going to work, right? What is the vital piece of information that this put request needs?
The thing.
Yeah, I actually need to send it. Hey, here's how I want you to update it. Just like we did with the post. You have to send it all that stuff from your form. So we send that. Just gonna refresh. So let's go to like scouting yo update. All right, looks like it maybe kind of did something. I'm gonna refresh. So refreshing can be a good thing because it will tell me, hey, I kind of think it worked in the database, but it didn't work in the UI. I refreshed to kind of confirm that. So does that make sense? I hit click update. For some reason, it's clearing out the values. So now I could go in and be like, okay, like this is working. Like the Axios call is working. So there's something wrong here in this line. Does anyone see it? Let me maybe just remove this, put this in 2 lines. Updated things. I'm just going to store this to a variable. I don't know if this will make it easier to read. So it's really, it is in here. There's something wrong in there. So what is the turn? What is this saying right here? First of all, what is T in this example? What is T going to be? Burned out. You sound burned out.
It's like what it's mapping over, right?
Yeah, and
Or-
yeah, it's
yeah.
what it's, and so that's going to be like a thing object, that has ID and name, right?
Yeah.
Cool. What is so, and then res.data, what is res.data? In this case, here's res.
Not your response.
Yeah, so but what is res.data?
That's all your things.
Well, we're in the we just did a put request. So res.data is an object.
That's the thing you're trying to update.
It's the thing that was updated,
Okay, yeah.
is updated. T is like each thing in array. So we go through each thing in the array and I check to see, hey, does the ID of each thing in the array, does it equal res.data.id? If it does, return res.data.id. If not, return T.
So you want to just return just res.data?
Yeah. I want to return, because res.data is the updated thing. The ID is just the number. So that was that error. So it's like updating to the database, but and there we go. Now it's working. I'm gonna, since it's kind of, lunchtime, I'm gonna leave it here. I mean, there's some things I think we could do. We could maybe add like a toggler to this so we don't show both the form and the update form. And we can maybe clear out these values. But yeah, we can maybe toggle this new form. But here we have just a different way of doing it where we're not using our data provider. We're not using React Router. We're just using React and state, maintaining our state within this things component and doing all the CRUD actions in this one page. Unlike our facts, we have like a show button that takes us to like a specific show page for that. We have a new button that takes us to a brand new page, which is the form. Or we could hit like an edit button that takes us to a form that edits it. And then when we like edit it, it takes us back. So there's not like a better way of doing it. This, like, which way should you do it? There's not like a right or wrong way. It's usually just whatever your designer or UX person or who's ever deciding how this, like the wireframes, they're kind of the one telling you how it should be. And you as a front end developer would need to like be able to do both or a combination.
So what's the point of UX people if they don't do any coding?
Because this first of all looks horrible. So
Yeah, but like couldn't the front end people do?
They're more like graphic designers, right? They have training in design.
it depends. A lot of the times, yeah, you will get someone who's kind of the UX UI. A lot of the time, if you're like a really big company, UX people can kind of be more like, they're not even really designers. They're more like scientists where they're doing like studies on groups of people, like they're doing research and like doing things like looking at like heat maps of like tracking where your eyes are looking. Like, is the button better here or is it better here if it's better if it's big? It's kind of like more science than design. It's like,
Oh, okay.
now there's always like, I've had jobs where it's like I was like the UX UI coder person. Now, yeah, but if you're Google, and you have a lot of resources and you have a lot of people using your app and like your Facebook, yeah, your UX people are probably going to be different than your design people. Because your design people are probably going to like fret over hours about what font to use or, the padding. Where like the UX is really much more like, yeah. What do your users actually want? What do they do? How can you make it easier for them? Cool. Let me push this up. Are there any other questions? So I think for your homework, I kind of just want you to follow along with this so you can keep working on whatever model you did. But if you get done with this, go create another model like we did with things and do this all, like, don't use your data provider, don't use React Router. Do it all with props and state, and do it all on one component. And I don't mean you have to use one component, because there's 3 different components, but this is all happening in my things component. I'm gonna add this commit. Cool, but yeah, if there's no other questions or anything, you can hop off. Let's just call it 110. Master. Sweet. Have a good lunch, everyone.